All right. Okay, it's kind of dark here. I'm on a boat right now. I work at this place called Laborde, and I work in the oil field as a deckhand. I have a lot of time to read, and I've heard it said once before that when you pick up a book and you read it, you get to try on somebody else's brain for a little bit, and it really kind of helps to truly expand your mind, give you more information, more knowledge, hopefully more wisdom. And right now, I just finished reading this one book. It's called the Lost History of Christianity: The Thousand-Year Golden Age of the Church in the Middle East, Africa, and Asia, and How It Died, by a man named Philip Jenkins. Now, it was an excellent book. I really enjoyed reading it. I don't agree with all of his opinions or what have you, but it gave me a much better knowledge of Christianity in the East, the Far East, and in Africa than I had in the past. And right now, I'm reading this other book called Under Crescent and Cross: The Jews in the Middle Ages by Mark R. Cohen. And so now this book, it covers some of the same ground as the Lost History of Christianity. Now, but it also covers Europe and the Jews' plight in Europe and the Jews' plight in the Arabic countries. And I think they're very good. And right now, obviously, here in the United States, we're having a big dilemma when it comes to immigration. And I've been reading a lot of stories. I have a lot of personal stories from people and so on and so forth. And I knew, I kind of knew the history of Christianity, the history of Islam, to an extent. And I knew about like different times in history where there would be deportations forced either in the Islamic countries or in the Christian countries from minorities, and often it was quite unjust and cruel, and usually out of fear. And in my mind, we had gotten past that, and we'd grown through it, and we no longer were dealing with that so much, at least in the West. But that was very naive on my part. And as I was seeing these other things and different things that I know about in history, there's one book I had read. I can't remember the name of the book. It was a great book, and it was about the Japanese immigrants that were here and children of immigrants that were here during World War II, and how they're in our country, in this country, they were rounded up and they were put into really concentration camps. They were treated very harshly. They lost their farms, they lost their livelihoods, all because we were scared that they might turn against us in a war on our land. It was the same thing that was happening with the Jews and the Muslims in Spain. During the Inquisition, there was a fear of, if the Muslims come back to attack us, then these people are going to be supporting the invaders. And then you had the same thing going on in the Mideast during like times of the Crusades or what have you, where the Muslims wanted to deport or kill the Christians and Jews or what have you, and so looking at this, it's kind of linked, in the sense that this has been going on for millennia. Massacres, unjust deportations, and reading some of these news stories and some of these articles and essays concerning immigration today, I can't help but link the two. You have a lot of rhetoric that is causing fear and hatred and anger. The bad hombres. So obviously the Latinos, they got to go. And things like that. And you have it characterized as all these illegal immigrants. Oh, they're taking money from the government. They're taking our tax dollars. They're raping our women, and they're killing our children. and they're all gang members, and but the reality is the vast majority of these immigrants, legal or illegal, they're here to make a better life for themselves and their families. And a lot of these people, their felonies, a lot of the felons, you got to look at this now. A lot of times these felons, their felony was they used a social security number so they could get a job, which means they were paying social security tax and they were paying federal tax and state tax, but they weren't getting these returns back because they were using a false social security number. Well, then they get tried as a felon for somebody who was stealing an identity, and they have these harsh laws. They really weren't committing a crime. They were doing what they had to do to be able to make money to support their families. They weren't trying to take somebody's identity and buy a house in their name or buy a bunch of products in their name and ruin their credit. That wasn't what's going on there. And you got a lot of people who maybe came over on a traveler visa or what have you, or even whatever kind of visa they came over on, and they got married and to somebody here in the United States or what have you, and so and these people maybe they didn't have enough money for the lawyer and for the fees and for all that, for all the different forms and things you have to get done in order to begin the process for getting a green card, and if you're struggling with money, like on the very low end, you could probably get the whole process started for about $3,000 if you're using a pro bono lawyer, and if you're not, it's going to cost you upwards of around $7,000 to $10,000 if you're not using a pro bono lawyer. Like my wife and I, we used for her, we used Catholic Charities because we couldn't afford the high price of a lawyer. And right now we're about to go through the process of renewing the green card, which is going to cost us a little over $700 or close to $800, and which is a lot of money for a single income house with children. And we have our third baby on the way right now. We got a 6-month-old, a 1.5-year-old, and a baby on the way. So we just finally moved out of a 1-bedroom into a house, and so when you look at history in these books that I'm reading right here, which is quite amazing, and then you look at our present time and you see the parallels and you see the connection. These are issues that aren't okay. Like these deportations. Yes, some like real actual criminals, like people that have done criminal acts as opposed to breaking civil laws. There's a big difference there, and I don't know the answer. And in my mind, I think that it wouldn't be too hard to get people a legal status where maybe they don't become pure citizens, where they could vote and all this and that. But if they could have a path to citizenship or a path to permanent legal residence, that's a very doable thing. These people are taxpayers. They're generally not leeching off of us. Heck, when I got laid off, we couldn't get any welfare from my wife because she's not a citizen and she's here legally. So we couldn't get her on Medicaid. I couldn't get any extra financial aid at all on her behalf as one of my dependents. Which being a homemaker now, that's essentially what she is. But yeah, so that's one of the things about these books that I really wanted to think about and maybe talk about a little bit. And another thing is reading the book The Lost History of Christianity. It's very interesting. You see, there was these huge swaths of Christian lands, of Christian missionaries going all the way over into China in the early church, and And these were huge churches, and at the time, there was almost no church in Europe at all, and you had, all kinds of bishoprics and patriarchates going very, very far east, and they've been completely obliterated for the most part, and some of them survived. Some of these ancient churches survived, like the Copts or the Coptic Christians, or the Ethiopian Christians, they down in Africa, and some of these communities survived for over 1,000 years of harsh persecution. Like the Copts from Syria. Look what's going on in Syria. Aleppo probably is not anymore, now that ISIS had it for so long, was one of the largest Christian populations in the Mideast, and it had been for millennia. And now that population has certainly been decimated. I mean, we all saw the head chopping and the live burning and all that. It was very, very horrible. But these communities survived in harsh environments for over 1,000 years, 1,500 years, and some of these communities they died off pretty rapidly. And Mr. Jenkins, he makes the point of, when it comes to the Copts, the Coptic Christians, they really integrated to all levels of society. Whereas in some of the places in Northern Africa and what have you, like it was relegated to a certain class, to a certain elite, and wasn't brought down to the language of the locals or to the class of the locals, and it didn't really take root because it was more or less kind of like a colonial type religion, and it never made itself a natural root and fruit bearing religion, and so therefore it died a lot easier. And looking at Christianity today, and in a post-Christian society, and the fact that like a lot of Christianity is really in and of itself making itself secular, using secular terminology, not using the word sin anymore, because sin, oh no, we don't want to use that word, and saying, it might be a dysfunction, something in a medicated way or what have you, something that needs therapy, but it's not something that needs reconciliation, not something that needs confession, not something that needs correction in the sense of moral downfall. It's not a moral issue, it's a mental issue. It's not a moral problem, it's a pathology or what have you. Well, if that becomes the language of the church, which is the language of society, of secular society, well, what purpose then does the church have? If the church doesn't offer redemption for the sin, but offers therapy for the pathology, where's that church going to lead? Like where's that church going to go? And then looking again at the fact of bringing it to the language of the people. Now, how do we do that now in our society? Because obviously, like us Christians, Catholic, Protestant, Orthodox, Oriental, we as a whole have put in study after study, money after money, mission after mission, trying to bring Christianity back to the forefront, trying to make converts, and it is seeming to really fail. We're becoming a much more secularized society. We're getting to the point to where they call evil good and good evil. Like literally, if you stand for the natural law, you're a bigot. If you stand against the natural law, then you're going to get a bunch of kudos. Like if you say that it's wrong and incorrect for a human being to mutilate their own genitalia because they feel a certain way, have a certain type of gender dysphoria, and you say, well, no, that's wrong. It's not okay for children to go through hormone therapy, or for people to get themselves mutilated because they have a certain feeling, like, oh, I feel like I should be a woman, or I feel like I should be a man, and so you go and self-mutilate. Self-mutilation is not okay, but to say that is now, in many circles, considered bigotry. So you look at different issues like this, and you look at the fact that for swaths and swaths of people, Christianity, as we've known it historically, is falling into disbelief. There's certainly pods of people that are coming up that are staying orthodoxly Christian, and that's good. But how do we bring our Christianity to the language of the people? How do we bring it to the language of the secular? And I don't mean like what I was saying about the changing sin to pathology. I mean, how do we bring the idea of redemption, the idea of sin, the idea of salvation, and the idea of Christ crucified and resurrected to the people? If we don't do that, then Christianity is destined to die in our land. Christianity is destined to die in Europe. How do we get those roots planted? And in another way too, I would say with the immigration, we have a huge amount of immigration. I'm Catholic, and I think the Catholic Church is failing in the United States. We have huge amounts of Latinos who don't have masses to go to. They don't have masses in Spanish. Now there's plenty of Spanish-speaking priests that I know, but you'll find a Spanish mass at 3 o'clock in this church over there when there's churches everywhere. And it's like, well, what are you going to do at 3 o'clock in the afternoon? If there's churches everywhere, give them a couple of masses that are going to be at an easy time to get to, instead of making it very hard. So it makes it a lot easier for them to become more and more secularized. And the immigrants that are coming here are already usually more secularized than the average. So we need to re-evangelize them, and we need to provide them the services, the spiritual services necessary. We need to provide them the sacraments. We need to provide them the catechesis. Heck, we need to provide the English-speaking people catechesis. So, I mean, where do we go from here? I really don't know. And these were just some of the thoughts that these books so far have brought to my mind, and along with some stuff some articles I read in the last couple of days. And so, I don't know, I just thought I'd throw together a little video. I don't know, this is the first time I've done this. I want to continue doing this, kind of dialoguing about the books that I'm reading, because I get the opportunity to read a lot of books when I'm working offshore. But God bless y'all. Go ahead and make comments. Tell me what you think. If you think I'm wrong about this and wrong about that, don't insult me. Don't throw insults at me. Throw book recommendations at me. I'm not rich. You can send me a book. I'll give you my address. And I'll read the book as soon as I possibly can, which will probably be sooner rather than later. So if you think I need to be woke, you think I'm not woke for things that I say or what have you, don't insult me. Teach me. Give me something to read. And Who knows? Maybe we could have a dialogue. Maybe you're the one wrong. Maybe I'm the one wrong. Maybe we're both wrong. Maybe both of us have a little bit of right and a little bit of wrong. But let's dialogue. Let's not insult. Let's be real. Let's be reasonable. Let's be logical. So with that, I'll talk to y'all later. God bless and goodbye.